And you're welcome back to The Pulse. A recap of some of the stories we're paying attention to here on The Pulse. The former president, John Dramani Mahama, is calling for a national dialogue to deliberate on the health of the economy. Just about hours ago, the former president posted on his Facebook page indicating a number of remedial measures he believes must be put in place to check Ghana's downgrade to a junk status. Let's bring you excerpts of what it is that the former president has been talking about once more, indicating that there appears to be no end in sight to the problems with the Ghanaian economy, with the recent downgrade to see junk status. Now, the steps, the steep depreciation of the Ghana cedi in recent days clearly indicates that the media review of the 2022 budget failed to win back the investor confidence. Obviously, at the tail end of his post, is asking for a national dialogue on the economy, bringing together some of our finest brains. So let's hear more from the president's party and some of his members of parliament who've been monitoring that, and also some of the former appointees on this. Joining us now, it's Kweku Ricketts-Hagan, a former deputy finance minister. He understands what it is that the former president was talking about. Joins us via Zoom. Thank you so much, sir, for your time here on The Pulse. So exactly what's the demand of the former president, and by extension, those of you in the minority side of the House, and the NDC on fixing the economy?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to your viewers. I think the call by His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, the former president, is long overdue. And the way things are going, if we don't arrest and address the situation very quickly, it wouldn't become a case of having a junk bond or a junk economy, but actually an irreparable economy. Things are getting bad. The most shocking thing, and that is why doing something like Senchi is very important, is that it looks as if the government has actually either doesn't understand the economy they are managing, or they are spinning it as always. One would have expected that the media review would have signaled the market, or would have signaled the IMF and the financial community that this government is serious about, whatever its own homegrown policies are, and they are prepared to work with the IMF to actually get the economy back on track and to stabilize the economy and the financial system in this country. But nothing of that sort was there. The media review looked like a federal manifesto promises instead of an emergency budget, which is what was expected. And so for the former president to call for that, and it's quite urgent, because for the government to say that they are not, I believe you have read what came out of the Ministry of Finance or from Honorable Ken Oforiatta, that they did not expect the rating agency to downgrade them. That is a clear indication of a government that doesn't understand the economy that they are trying to manage. It was so obvious. And we have all been saying it, that there's going to be a further downgrade, because what the market has done is that they have priced in all the challenges that the economy is facing. Now, let's wait for the IMF to finish with their debt sustainability analysis, and then really start with the issue of restructuring. There will be a further downgrade. Standard & Poor's is one of the most conservative rating agencies. They hardly downgrade you. In the last downgrade done by Moody, Standard & Poor's remained stable. So for them to come and give you a triple, that is serious. And we will have a further downgrade when the actual restructuring starts. Because then if your bonds are junk and you indicate that you can no longer pay your debt, then the market will further downgrade you. At the moment, they are downgrading, pricing in based on indication of what they expect will go. When you actually get there, you will get a further downgrade. And our rating will become a triple C minus very, very soon if the government doesn't wake up and smell the coffee. Because at the moment, what is going on is far serious than these guys can see. You come with a media review and start talking about Tanta care, this care and that, as if you are reading a manifesto, instead of coming to tell us exactly what measures that you are taking to address, first of all, our debt situation. How are you going to restructure the debt? How are you going to be reducing our debt? How are you going to put the economy back on track? What have your policies so far? Where have you gotten to with those? The discretionary cuts that you promised us and all the other cuts. What have you gotten out of it? And what do we need to do to be able to get to a sustainable level? None of these were actually in the mid-year review. The mid-year review should have been an emergency budget requesting Parliament to give the government the opportunity to do certain critical things that will stabilize the economy. I am really, really worried that this economy will further deteriorate and things will get very, very bad for all of us. At the end of the day, we all live in this country. So if things get bad, what are we going to do? Start Ken Oforiatta or put him in prison? That wouldn't resolve the problem. So the earlier we address it, and I back His Excellency John Dramani's call for an immediate, not only just a dialogue, but it has to be immediate, because there is an imminent danger that this Ghana's economy will default and eventually collapse. And something needs to be done urgently. So in addition to His Excellency's call of a dialogue, I am adding to His Excellency that it has to be done immediately.
There's the question about what difference it will make if we hold that national dialogue. We've seen that during the NDC era. The criticism is that it's not giving us any results. I mean, going by what it is that happened during the NDC era, we ended up with the IMF once more. So the belief is we're still going back to the IMF anyway. So what's the need for a dialogue?
I'll tell you what is very clear why we need a national dialogue now. The things that have basically transpired in the last few months, especially even yesterday, tells me clearly that these managers of the economy don't actually fully grasp the enormity of the problem that we have, or doesn't comprehend where this is sending us. And that is why we need fresh brains, we need good brains, good economic finance brains to come and help us get out of this situation. Because at the end of the day, Ghana is for all of us. If we are suffering, it's collective. The hardship that is being felt at the moment by Ghanaians is a collective, hardship that we are all facing. Therefore, if we have people who wouldn't get off their high horses and address the problem as we see it, and try to pretend that everything is okay, then when things finally collapse, these people will be nowhere to be found. And that is why it is critical. Yes, you talk about us going to Senchi. When we invited them, they didn't show up. That's fine. Other people showed up and helped us to get out of that situation. It's unfortunate that a few years down the road, we have to return back to the IMF. But that is neither here nor there. We are in a critical situation. This country is just about to collapse. We are technically insolvent. If you look at our assets and our liabilities at the moment, you look at our reserve. Look, let me tell you something. Since the mid-year review was done a few weeks ago, Ghana's external debt has gone up by 27 billion. Just the last year. Let me tell you how. When the mid-year review was done, the cedi to the dollar was 8 cedis to the dollar. That translated our 27 million into a 60 million additional debt. Between that time and now, the dollar is now 9 cedis. Meanwhile, it means that additional cedi has been added. So our $27 billion debt that was there has increased by another 27 billion cedis. And that is the direction that we are heading. The cedi equivalent of our debt is taken by the minute. And very soon, just exchange rate losses alone will be more than the actual debt that we owe. That is where the danger is. Going
by the statement we've received from the Finance Ministry, they talk about a number of revenue measures showing up government effort in ensuring that the cedi appreciates. They talk about, for instance, the e-levy and our decision to roll some programs out with the IMF. The belief is all of these factors will restore confidence in the international market and we'll be able to get back to our position where we used to be before. So what's really the big deal in this? Why don't you wait as a political party just to allow government some time to deal with the challenges?
There is a really big deal because you and I also live in this country. You and I suffer from whatever bad policies that this government implement. What did they tell us, around the budget time? They told us that they put in place policies that will address the situation. What happened? the rating agencies downgraded them. And instead of looking at the problem, they actually rather started attacking the rating agencies. The same thing they are telling us today. My brother, where we've gotten to now, it's not about rhetoric. It's about actual doings that will actually change the fortunes of this country. You know, the market don't believe you. The financial institutions don't believe you. Just by saying that you are doing this, you are doing that, you are doing that, doesn't get it done. You have to be seen to be doing them. And at the moment, they are talking the talk, but they are not actually walking the walk. The policies that they have in place, you know, in mathematics, they have something called, you know, necessary but not sufficient. At the moment, the policies being implemented by this government may be necessary, but they're not sufficient to address the problems that we are facing at the moment. And that is why the dialogue His Excellency President Mahama is calling for is very, very important. And it is not only important, it has to happen now. Before this economy further deteriorates.
And in fact, what's instructive about that statement, perhaps we may want to go back to that statement, so I read portions of that to you. The former president talking about the need to bring back some of our finest brains. And we'll try and get that to you. I mean, I wanted to quote the exact words to you, but it is as though the former president is trying to suggest that the NPP is lacking the men to deal with the problem. He says that he talks about a national dialogue on the economy and bringing together some of our best brains, which will serve us very well, even as we prepare for some debt restructuring. Is the former president suggesting that the government doesn't have, I mean, the men? We've heard from the president yesterday speak and say, I have confidence in my appointees.
Well, I mean, if it's not clear to us that this government hasn't actually got the people to solve the problem, it should be clear to you now. I mean, obviously now, we have people who don't even understand why they've been downgraded. You have people who...
It appears that we're having some challenges.
Who sets... Okay, cool. I don't know what the president is talking about. Problem. They don't look. You call on your program on a daily basis. You know, economic professors and experts in the industry to talk to them about the problems facing the economy and how we can solve them. These are the men that we are talking about. We are not talking about calling, you know, opposition party people and all that. Of course, we will help if they call us. But we have real experts in this country who actually understand what is going on. And they are giving us solutions on your program, on your station, on a daily basis. Why is the president not listening? Why is the government not listening? Maybe we need to get them to the closer doors of the government. What they are doing at the moment is not working. The finance minister is a finance minister. His performance has been abysmal. In any jurisdiction, Ken Ofori-Atta would not be sitting in office. And the president doesn't see the reason for a change. But we are not going to sit down and wait for the ceiling to fall on us before we realize that, you know, we've actually had it.
I mean, why are you putting this squarely at the doorsteps of the finance minister? It appears that government says it's mostly about the external factors and not the doing of Ken Ofori-Atta, whose name you've been mentioning all this while.
You see, we are putting our head in the sand and thinking that when we get it out, all these external problems they are talking about will go away. Yes, there's an element of the COVID, there's an element of Russian-Ukraine war, but what those things have done is that they have exposed the fragility of this economy. They have exposed us more than adding to anything. And that is what we need to address. You know, long before COVID, long before the Ukraine war, this economy was having challenges. And the managers of the economy were not being truthful to us as to what our economic indicators were. They kept lying, they did comparison, they kept talking about their manifesto promises, and nothing is working. Nothing of the flagship program is working. Free SHS, good as it may be, needs to be reviewed. It is expensive, and it's become cumbersome and very, very, very difficult to implement. You look at the planting for food. This is the only country where the more food we plant, the less we harvest. Something is not working with the planting for food. Additional 600 million was given to the Ministry of Finance and Ministry of Agriculture, in addition to its own original budget. And nothing is coming out of it. The bulk of the inflation we are facing at the moment is a food inflation. It is not Ukraine-Russian war. It's cassava grown in Ukraine or plantains grown in Ukraine. Yes, you can talk about bread. But look, we are not able to feed our people with our own things that we produce in this country.
So going forward, what's your expectation? Finally, what's your expectation of government in the coming days? We understand that the IMF team will be in town soon. The president says we're inching closer to getting an IMF deal. So what's your expectation in the coming days?
No, I don't want to call the president a liar. There is no way we are going to get an IMF deal next week. It's simply, look, if you understand the process, and we've been there, if you understand the process of getting into an IMF program, the earliest will be next year, January or February. Even that is becoming increasingly difficult because a lot of the restructuring that we will have to do before we get into an IMF program is going to be difficult to do. In the past, our restructuring is usually done with multinationals and bilaterals. Now, about 70% of our external debt is actually by Eurobond issued by this government, $11 billion of it. To go to the market to restructure a junk bond is not going to be an easy exercise. And that has to be done. And the market will downgrade us. If you are restructuring, you are basically taking new bonds to replace old ones, presumably that the new bonds are going to be cheaper. You cannot get be in a junk status and have a cheaper bond to replace bonds that yesterday you were a little credible, and now you are completely incredible. So how can you do that? So even to get a deal with the IMF might not happen. I have talked about this. I don't want to be the prophet of doom, that we may possibly not get a program with IMF because we can't restructure our debt, especially in the capital market, and then best unsustainable debt.
Anyway,
IMF does not lend to countries that have unsustainable debt. So the better that this government gets up and do it, what His Excellency President Mahama has called, look, it's nothing to do with politics. It's about somebody, a Ghanaian citizen, who has been a former president before, who has been in the same situation before, and sees the dangers ahead of us. And he's calling for this. No, don't forget that he's likely to be the president in 2025. And if things are not addressed today, it will fall on his table. So it is in his interest, as much as the current president and the finance minister and all of us, to make sure that this problem is.
All right, then. I'm grateful for your time. That's Ricky Hagan, a former Deputy Finance Minister.